of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these things they think are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their...
What is a woman?
Yeah. Great question. I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
I think you should experience it. You always say, I want to experience things, but I don't think you actually want to experience things because you would experience it if you wanted to experience things. I don't know what you're talking about.
At what age can a child first begin to transition into another gender or identify themselves as a gender different from how they were born?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's research and data that show that babies and infants understand differences in gender.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God, my Shayla, my Shayla.
I know it's been a long time, but good things take time. And I'm about to bring you good things, so you're welcome. I had the pleasure to allow myself to do some traveling in order to be in this present moment as a more evolved human being. So you're welcome. I'm always thinking of you. Aww. Therefore, now that we are two evolved human beings, hopefully we can assimilate today's conversation in, I guess, a more profound way. Today's conversation is going to be a little bit different from our usual schedule. Now, don't get me wrong. Even though I love my conspiracy, my deep dives, my right and wrong, my black and white, my chisme, my gossip, there's no doubt that all kind of feeds into a very materialistic state of mind. Therefore, in order to find balance within ourselves and our interaction with the world, we should make time and space every now and then to feed into the gray areas of life. For me, that gray area represents philosophy, or simply deep thinking in anything that's not necessarily the materialistic world. Now, as an ex-philosophy major, I know I have a deep universal love for philosophy itself, its history, its extinction, sadly, because people don't be really thinking that deep anymore. But in general, I love philosophy. And I think the beauty of philosophy is the acknowledgement that not everything has to be black or white, right or wrong. That not everything in life should have a conclusion or an end-all be-all answer. Maybe sometimes certain topics can just simply be an endless universal conversation. So therefore today we are going to kind of feed that inner abandoned philosopher that we all have within us. And you might ask, how do we feed that inner abandoned philosopher that we all have? Well, my friend, very simple. That's what I call evolving through the art of questioning. Simple. Philosophy at the end of the day is just questioning reality. So without further ado, dear student, teacher, and philosopher, I now grant you entrance to the new course that I like to call a more human experience. Before we start, I want to thank you, honor you, king or queen, for sharing your time and space and for being open to questioning reality with me. Gracias. Now before we start, get your mate, get your filtered water. Now, like I said, I like to consider philosophy the art of questioning reality, but I always like to optimize it, and that's where traveling comes in. Traveling is not only about seeing new places. It is also a chance to allow us to see life in new ways. Because when we leave our everyday routines to experience new spaces and cultures, we start to subconsciously question what we know about life, people, and even ourselves. Whether that be on a long train ride, looking through the window, on a quick walk through foreign streets, or during a chat with a stranger you're probably never going to see again in your life. In our travels, we often find ourselves thinking more deeply, and hence going back to our day-to-day life as a different person. Being in a new place can make us wonder about things that might have already curated a conclusion in your life. Like, what does it mean to be happy? What does it mean to belong? Are the things we value really that important? Many famous thinkers and philosophers did most of their learning through traveling. They believed that moving through a world eventually moved your mind. In this way, considering travel to be more than just an adventure or a vacation, but rather acknowledging that it's a way to grow and think differently. Now for our first class in our philosophy course, we are going to talk about a versus situation. Basically, an idea against another idea, an experience against another experience. Today's conversation is titled The Cost of Materialism in the West versus the Wisdom of the Italian Culture. Now, yes, as you might have guessed, I did go to Italy. I know, giving a little basic, but hear me out. Like I said, most of my travels are not meant for vacation purposes. They are meant to evolve through the art of travel and questioning. I genuinely believe that each country has its purpose to exist. Each culture has a purpose in this world. And obviously, I received some very special downloads from the beautiful country of Italy. Now, before we get started, let's create a mental image in order to understand today's conversation. Imagine this. In the glass towers of the Western cities, the rhythm of life is dictated by deadlines, transactions, and the relentless pursuit of success. A businessman in New York rushes from meeting to meeting, checking stock prices on his phone, inhaling a sandwich between emails and calls. Now, a woman in London swipes her credit card one more time for yet another designer handbag, momentarily satisfied before the emptiness creeps back again. In much of the Western world, wealth is the ultimate measure of success. Status is built on what one owns, and time is a commodity to be maximized to the fullest. But step now into the streets of an Italian village, and the contrast is striking. Here, a shopkeeper leans in the doorway, chatting with the neighbors about the weather. A family gathers around a table. Their meal stretches into the late afternoon, full of conversation and debate. In Italy, life moves differently, not in a race to accumulate, but in a rhythm that values presence, pleasure, and the human connection. Now, there's no doubt that, like I said, each country, each person in general has a purpose in this world. For instance, Western society and Western lifestyle have mastered the concept of innovation. Skyscrapers rise overnight, meals are prepackaged and preheated for speed, and conversations are reduced to quick text messages and emails. Success is tied to productivity, and productivity is tied to success. That's the motto. And rest is sadly seen as a luxury rather than a necessity. In Italy, however, work is part of life, not the defining purpose of it. For instance, the afternoon siesta, which is basically nap time, you can say. Though it's not as common in today's society, it still reflects the idea that work should never consume a person's whole day. In Italy, meals are sacred, probably more sacred than going to church, frankly. And therefore, businesses often close for lunch so owners and employees alike can enjoy food with family, friends, or simply just have some alone time. The emphasis is not to work more, but to live more. But if I had to divide the biggest differences between the Western society and Italian culture, I would divide it into three. The things that I noticed the most. That is food, relationships, and time. Now, nowhere is there a bigger difference between Western materialism and Italian lifestyle more apparent than in the way people eat. And I'm not talking about the food itself. I'm talking about the moment, the experience, the quality. In the United States, at least, fast food chains have become the norm, catering to a culture that often eats on the go. Meals are often rushed, eaten in cars or in front of the TV. Even the concept of food itself has been reduced to calories in, calories out fuel, rather than an experience. Supermarkets overflow with prepackaged meals designed for convenience rather than quality. But in Italy, food is a ritual. A meal is not just about eating, it's about gathering, savoring, and sharing. Ingredients are fresh, recipes are passed down generation to generation, and most of the time are pretty simple. And there's even time given to preparation. The preparation of the food, the preparation of the table, the space. I had the pleasure of talking to a stranger, elderly Italian man that said that Italians live the well-known dolce vita, the sweet life. And he kind of compared the idea of Western living and Italian culture in a simple sentence. He said, a simple plate of pasta made with care and shared with loved ones carries much more richness than the most expensive steak eaten alone at a desk. And frankly, he could not explain it better. Now, the other big contrast within the West and Italy, at least, was time. How time felt. Time, one if not the most valuable thing in life, tends to move faster when living a more materialistic life. In cities like LA and London, time is money. And frankly, that's not good or bad. People go there because that's their purpose. People walk fast, speak fast, and live with an underlying urgency to be more, to do more, to own more. Most of the time, not really knowing why. In Italy, time is not something to be conquered, to be optimized. It is something to be enjoyed. And I know it may sound sound obvious, but yet, even in my very Latin head, it sounds like a foreign idea to enjoy time. Like the simple concept of having an evening stroll exemplifies this concept of enjoying time. Italians walk through the piazza, which is the city center, you can say, not to get anywhere most of the time, but simply to exist in the moment, to see familiar faces, to breathe in the night air, to feel connected to their surroundings. Again, sounds very obvious and a very human thing to do, but has become so alien to us. Even this simple act stands in stark contrast to the West, where even leisure must often serve a purpose, whether that be exercise, networking, self-improvement, rather than simply being an act of pleasure. Now, relationships. Relationships also reflect this cultural divide. In Western societies, networking is strategic. Friendships tend to be more transactional, whether we are aware of it or not. Social interactions are often planned weeks or months in advance, usually squeezed into our busy schedules. But in Italy, relationships are spontaneous and deeply ingrained in daily life. Conversations last for hours, and most importantly, family remains at the center of everything. As a conclusion to our conversation, this is not to say that one culture is inherently better than the other, because there's no denying that the West strives in innovation, ambition, and economic power. And Italy too has had its struggles, whether that be economic instability, bureaucracy, and an aging population have all been very serious challenges that the country is still currently facing. Yet when it comes to the human experience, I learned that Italy offers something that the West often neglects, and that is balance. The key to everything in life. Just like I said at the beginning of the video, I believe everyone and everything in every country has a purpose and a lesson in this world for everyone. And I like to believe that Italy reminds the world that success is not just about climbing the corporate ladder, but about stepping out every now and then and enjoying the view. That wealth is not just about what's in your bank or how much crypto or land you own, but about the richness of conversations, of a home-cooked meal, and the warmth of human connection. In the end, the question is not whether material success is bad. It is whether it should define human life. The West builds, expands, and accelerates, but often at the cost of the soul. Italy lingers, it savors, it embraces, reminding the world that the richest experiences cannot be bought. And perhaps true success is not always about having more, but about knowing how to live more. So, dear philosopher, student, and teacher, with that, we close our first class of our philosophy course. So, till next one, thank you, gracias, y hasta la próxima.